As you say, this instrument relates to the nationalisation of ScotRail, and when you appeared before this committee less than 2 months ago, you told us that the main reason for the nationalisation was, in your words, to increase accountability, to make sure ministers are held to account. Given that main reason for the nationalisation of ScotRail, do you accept responsibility for the significant service cuts we are seeing across Scotland?
Well, the service cuts that we are seeing across Scotland at this moment in time relate to an industrial dispute between Aslef, the train drivers' union, and ScotRail, the employer. And Aslef train drivers, as you may know, convener, are refusing to work on the rest days at this moment in time. As a result, ScotRail took the decision to reduce the number of services because they don't have enough train drivers to fulfil the previous timetable, and therefore a reduction of the timetable was introduced from yesterday. I have to say, though, that's not what this order relates to today.
It's not directly relevant, my question, to the order, but it relates to the nationalisation of ScotRail, which this order does relate to. Because, as you know, Scottish ministers now own ScotRail 100%, as you said, via a holding company. So the question is, why aren't Scottish ministers getting directly involved in this process to ensure that we don't see massive cuts to rail services in Scotland?
Sorry, Convener, why are Scottish ministers getting involved?
Why are we not seeing Scottish ministers getting involved in helping to resolve this issue?
So 2 points, Convener. I don't think that's an accurate description of what's been happening in recent days. On Friday, I spent a considerable part of the day with ScotRail, and yesterday I met with ScotRail along with Mr Reeve to discuss some of the challenges around about the current situation. It's not the case, though, that Scottish ministers are in the room. Of course, ScotRail, as the employer, will be in the room negotiating with Aslef, and I think Aslef will be meeting later today with ScotRail to move talks forward. It's absolutely essential that we get to a restoration of the previous timetable. However, you will appreciate, Convener, that ScotRail can't fulfil the current timetable, or the previous timetable rather, because it doesn't have enough drivers to do so. ScotRail, like many train operators across the UK, depends upon drivers working on their rest days. Now, drivers working on their rest days is a historic thing that exists in the rail industry. It's not something that's come into existence under nationalisation of our trains. It relies upon, primarily, goodwill of drivers. Now, I understand that Aslef are in dispute with ScotRail. I absolutely respect that. They've balloted their members on the pay offer. This is a separate issue because drivers are choosing not to work on their rest days. Now, if drivers want to spend time with their families or take part in leisure pursuits, then that's in their gift, of course. But it's also the case that ScotRail can't run as many trains as would usually be the case under the previous timetable, which is why ScotRail took the decision, the difficult decision, I have to say, to reduce train allocation. And that's why we have a reduction in terms of the timetable at this moment in time. Now, as Minister, I am absolutely committed to working with both our trade union partners, who, as you know from my previous evidence session, I spent a lot of time with in terms of the nationalisation, what that means for them, whether or not they want to be part of that vision. I sincerely hope they do. They campaigned, of course, for a long time for public ownership of Scotland's trains. However, we need to get to a resolution on this dispute, and we need to get to a better place with train drivers in terms of there being availability to work and us being able to restore, ultimately, the timetable. And I'm working closely with ScotRail to see where we might be able to lead to a restoration of a number of services over the coming weeks and months.
Thank you. Final question before I bring in other members. These rail cuts are costing Scotland's economy £80 million a day, which I'm sure you will be concerned about. Do you have an idea of how long this dispute might last? Do you have a provisional timetable for when you would like this to be settled?
I would like it to be settled today, Convener. However, as you will be aware, Aslef are in dispute with ScotRail, the employer, at this moment in time. We need to get to a resolution, and I'm absolutely committed to working with both parties to ensure that we can get to a restoration of the previous timetable. But that depends on both sides, I think, coming to compromise with regard to reaching a settlement which will meet the needs of all passengers.